Is enough ever enough? I mean, financially. Well, one of the things that has driven North America, and largely the world, since 1750 is industrial production. And there is an endless hunger amongst human beings to buy stuff, more stuff. And there is therefore an endless amount of stuff that we can't produce. I don't know if it's actually endless. That might be untrue. You may find someone who say, oh, there are limits to what you can produce and maybe what you should produce. Um, and we run up against those. We ran up against, for example, as we were making our industrial production, there are five massive lakes in the middle of North America called the Great Lakes. So named because they're as big as, well, some more inland seas, actually. But they are still freshwater lakes. And we managed to almost kill Lake Erie in the 60s with industrial pollution that was dumped holus bolus right straight into the lake. Nobody paid any attention to cleaning it up, and so, of course, all the living things came close to dying. They actually did call it a dead lake at the time, but it wasn't. Close, though. So, yeah, maybe we do need to pay attention, and I suppose some people might point to Beijing or Shanghai. I met a guy from Shanghai, and I said to him, how come you moved to Winnipeg, which is in the middle of nowhere, Canada? And he said, clean air. And I said, clean air? He said, yeah, I was in the industrial chemical business. And my wife and I started to wear gas masks to walk the street. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, I know what's in those chemicals, so I don't want to breathe it. Oh, I said, so what's in the chemicals? He said, I don't want to go into that, but what I do want to say is this. When we, my wife and I, got industrial gas masks and started walking down the street, we were kind of concerned that other people would make fun of us. And what they did, in fact, was come up to us and say, can you tell me where to get one of those? So maybe there are limits to how much we can produce and should. But that raises the next question, human demand. There seems to be an endless number of people and a growingly large number of people, which we used to talk about population control, but that's never going to happen, it seems, especially when you're poor. Yeah, richer people have fewer kids. Very interesting pattern there, I think. So, if there's an endless demand, should we impoverish people to make the supply? If you look back in history, you'll find some very, very poor working conditions. And I don't mean poor in terms of just bad. I mean unpaid, slavery. They used to hire children to lie underneath looms and pick up the leftover bits of cotton that fell to the floor, which would then be sent back and spun, I suppose, into something else to make more fabric. But those children didn't have a particularly nice life. They lived on the floor, and I'm sure they weren't paid. They were bought from the parish. And if you think that's a myth, read something like Oliver Twist, because Oliver Twist gets sold a couple of times in that book, so it's not a made-up thing that it happened. Oh no, that was very real. And did the people who were buying and selling these actually need to? As it turns out, no. As a lad, I had my first job at 13, my second job at 14, which was a little more steady. And at 14 years of age, I was being paid the equivalent in today's money, 2021, $16 an hour. Do you know anybody who's never had a real full-time job before, like 40 hours a week, that makes $16 an hour because that's the law anymore? No. And what have we done to get here? Well, we told a lie. And we then swallowed the lie. And worse, because we live in a democracy, we voted for the liars. And the lie was this: I am going to reduce the poor people's taxes by reducing the rich people's taxes. Oh, well, how does that work? It's too complicated for you common people to understand, but believe it. That was the truth. That's how the message was passed along. Believe. Just believe. Well, you know something? If there had been any truth to this, than back in the days of kings and queens, which, by the way, were still very much alive in the 1700s. Those children would not have been living under looms, bought and paid for by some factory owner. They'd have been paid $40 an hour. So making the rich richer has never made the poor richer. It has made the poor poorer. And sometimes in history, things happen which say, I'm going to change that. And the American Revolution was one of those times. The Americans are the ultimate left-wing party, or at least they used to be. Now, they're all mixed up. They don't know which end is up. And a lot of people listen to them because they were a successful democracy, but they don't realize just how messed up their own people are. They listen to lies and believe in them and throw themselves, holus bolus, heart and soul, into people who will tell them what to do. Because thinking for yourself is hard. But you have to do it if you live in a democracy, or else you wind up living in a monarchy. And that, my friends, is what happens. Democracies eventually devolve into anarchy, all of them. That is the fate. And in an anarchy, nature abhors a vacuum. So along comes somebody with a bigger club than the other guy and becomes the monarch. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. He's gone right now, but the belief that making the rich richer will make the poor richer pervades and still exists. So get over it. Get rid of the policy. Stretch the people who have not paid their fair share into paying it for a while, heavily, like they did after World War II when the tax rate was 97% on the richest people, or give up. Now, I don't know about you. I've lived a very decent life without having given up. I hope you don't either. My name's Patrick Stewart. I'm not conservative, and I don't really think you should be either, unless, of course, you want your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren to become slaves.